I'm called to order our meeting. Welcome to our March the 20th, 2017 meeting of the Gaston County Board of Education. I am Kevin Collier. I represent the Riverbend Township. And to my left is the Vice Chairman, Jeff Ramsey. He's a member at large. And I'm going to start to my right and let the board members introduce themselves and their township.
Lee Dedman, Gastonia Township.
Chris Howell, South Point Township.
Terry Usry, Cherryville Township.
Catherine Roberts, Dallas Township.
Dot Guthrie, Gastonia Township.
Brett Moore, Crowder's Mountain Township.
Dot Jerry, at-large member.
Thank you. And on behalf of the board, thank you for being here tonight. And for those that happen to be watching, thank you for watching. At this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board. I would like for us to pause for a moment in remembrance of Mrs. Mildred Sadler. Many of you know she was a pioneer in public education in Gaston County and gave most of her life to serving our children. It's impossible to count the number of ways that Mrs. Sadler influenced education here in Gaston County and throughout the region and across the state. And everything that she did, from serving as a teacher, an assistant principal, a central office administrator, she always kept one thing in front of her, and that was school children. And they were always to her heart. And as I became superintendent, her reaching out and talking about this community and what it meant to be a part of the school system was very touching. She will be remembered in many ways for what she did in public education, but one large way is she was a trailblazer. She was one of our first African administrators as well as one of our first female administrators. But through it all, she was an advocate for the teachers and parents of this school system. So I would like for you all to join me in a moment of silence in remembrance of Mrs. Sadler. Thank you. Our thoughts and prayers are with their family during this very difficult time. It is a great loss for all of us. If you all would join me and stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The next item on our agenda is to adopt the agenda. I'll need a motion and a second. Motion by Ms. Cherry, second by Ms. Guthrie. No, I'm sorry, that was Mr. Usher on the second. Any discussion on the agenda? Mr. Howell.
Mr. Chair, can I ask to pull item F, contracts, benchmark assessments, grades 3 through 8 out of that so I can ask some questions, and I think we can just vote for that on the side of that, but I have some questions about that. If we could just, unless you're going to let me ask the questions. Let's just pull it out.
Well, if it would please the board, if it's just questions, I'd rather just leave there and let you ask the specific
well, depending
questions.
On the answers, it might not be a vote of four, so
okay.
It might be better to pull it out.
Okay. All right, is that a substitute motion, Mr. Howell, or?
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, if we can pull item F, contracts, benchmark assessments, grades 3 through 8 off of the consent agenda and put it on the regular agenda.
I'll put that just before superintendent comments, and that will become item 16 then, and
Thanks,
superintendent comments will be 17. I need a second to that amended motion.
Could we put it before the consent
agenda. That way, if it passes the questions, it can then go back on the consent agenda to,
Okay, would that be okay if we just move the item before the consent agenda as discussion, and if,
If you're asking me if I'm going to argue with an attorney, the answer is no, so that's fine.
okay. We're going to put item F, contracts and benchmark assessments, item number 15, and then move the consent agenda to item 16. And we will have it for discussion and a possible motion. Okay? Now, I need a second to that amendment to the agenda, and that's by Mr. Dedman. And as a point of order, is this is the motion we're voting for, is the motion that's on the table. The first motion is not in play at this time.
so just to be clear, why don't we vote on the agenda as amended to include the contracts portion as item 15 for discussion?
Okay. Dana, do you have that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I got a motion from Mr. Howell and a second from Mr. Dedman. Any more discussion on the amended agenda? If not, all those in favor show by raising your hand. And that's unanimous. Okay, so the first motion then fails. I want to make sure I get this right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay, the next item on our agenda is good news. Mr. Booker?
We have several great items of good news for the board. We're going to start with Gaston, which was held 2 Saturdays ago at Forest View High School. We have 2 of our winning teams with us tonight from Catawba Heights Elementary School and Stanley Middle School. First, we'd like to bring Catawba Heights forward. Come on up. Now, I'm going to impose on our team advisors to introduce these children because I only have 4 names and I can count, but we have more than 4 children. So would you mind going over to the mic and introducing them, please?
Connor Conway, Heath Monroe, Lakin Harris, Porter Robinson, Jennifer Lopez Grajales, and Dallas Gordy.
Great.
And I am Barbara Miller, and that's
Ms. Holder.
Jennifer Holder.
Yes, great. Thank you. Mr. Howe, this is the Catawba Heights who represent our elementary champions of robotics. And I can tell you, they're being really calm compared to the way they were 2 Saturdays ago.
So one of the things I got to do earlier in the year was go to out towards the other side of Mount Holly. And I walked into a 4th grade classroom and they wanted to show me their robot. And the robot looked like a sawed off, rounded off version of something off of Star Wars. And it was rolling around on the floor and it looked like a little hamster that got loose. So I'm assuming that y'all did something like just about this big, that wide. They picked a car up, carried it somewhere and brought it back. Is that correct? Just shake your head. They don't know. No. So somebody tell me. He's like, yeah. Somebody tell me what you did. What was your robot and how'd you win? Go ahead.
Our robot was the EV3. Was the EV3 Mindstorm, and it was about this big. It was about this big, and we won because number 1, we had confidence. Number 2, we did the programs right, and
So by confidence, you walked in, grabbed the trophy, put it beside your station and said, now I'll show you my robot. Just checking. Well, listen, we're super proud of you. There's a certificate that you'll get that says Certificate of Recognition presented to. It'll have your name, RoboGaston competition, overall robotics team winner. And it even says here that you beat the middle school with your elementary competition. It's signed by our board chairman, Mr. Kevin Collier, and by the superintendent, Mr. Booker. So great job. Let's see, this one goes to Porter Robinson.
right here.
Did I see that? Do that? Such confidence. Dallas Gordy on the end. Can't forget that name, can you? Heath Monroe. There you go, sir. Lakin Harris. There you go.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Connor Conway. Yes, sir. This one won't be hard to figure out, but I'm not going to say it. Miss Jennifer. Good deal. If y'all fold that back. What's that?
Kendall wanted here though.
Kendall wasn't here.
Yeah, she's still sick today.
Okay, we'll make sure she gets one. So if y'all will flip that back like this. Y'all do a robot. I know y'all can do this.
It's
Do it
very
like-
complicated.
Do it like that right there.
Apparently very complicated. There's that.
How you come back here?
This is the only time I get to stand on the back row.
Yeah, hold your trophy. Who's gonna hold the trophy? You wanna hold it?
Performance,
All right, boys, you all ready?
Must come out
Boys and
faster.
girls?
Check it out.
Big smiles. Last one. Thank you.
Guys, before y'all leave, come
Can
on
we
and shake the.
get all the parents in the picture, Sean? Please?
Yeah, it looks like they're going.
It's so complicated.
Y'all come on in, parents.
So it's,
Come on in.
Seriously though, show us.
Come on, come on.
but wait till your parents come.
Show us right there that we're on TV.
Don't be shy.
Your mom's going first.
Just fill behind the students.
Just hide behind them. Thank y'all for letting me do this.
Thanks for picking them up here.
Everybody look this way. And one more. All right, thank you.
Good job. Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. Good job. They were excited, were they? That's great.
Now from Stanley Middle School, if I could invite Team Advisor John Stone forward with his team. He's only got 5, so he gets to invite him. And Mr. Stone, if you do the same, please, and introduce your team. And Ms. Huffstedler, don't get comfortable back there. You get on up and come on, get ready.
Okay, we have 7th grader Alex Putnam. We have 7th grader Zachary Lewis. We have 6th grader Alexander Helton. We have 6th grader Brandon Fairfield. And we have 6th grader Harrison Rowland. We have 3 students that were unable to make it. Osmar Sanchez, he is an 8th grader. And we have 7th grader Alan Chin. And we have 6th grader Garrett Thornton. They couldn't be with us tonight. And I am John Stone, and I'm the teacher sponsor.
Great, thank you.
I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure of going to one of these competitions, but if you've ever been to Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader, they give earpieces because it's so loud. They need to give them out at these too because they get so excited. But it's awesome to see them work as a team and make these robots. It's just amazing. And tomorrow I'll actually be in the classroom watching an elementary school put theirs together. It's very impressive. And a little birdie told me some of you may have ball practice, so we're gonna make this quick and painless, okay? Here you go. I'm gonna try to go ahead and fold them for you to get ready for the picture. Ms. Hofstetler needs to go ahead and come on up here and get ready for the picture. Congratulations. Unless any of you would like to speak about what you did and what your robot was? Anyone? Any
Go ahead,
takers? Awesome.
So, like you said, ours was an EV3 Mindstorm. It was about the same size. We had some bigger attachments though, and we made it on about a period of about 2-3 days. It wasn't that hard. It was very simple. And our project and our skit, we had help from a local beekeeper, Scott Griffin. He's been a teacher for a while. You probably know him. And he was very helpful and helped us make our product, the oxalic acid robot.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, we ready for the picture?
Maybe just squeeze in just a little bit more. You come back up to the side.
Squeezing.
Wait, smile. Yeah, one more. Thank you.
We want parents in this one too?
They weren't interested. They appreciate
Not
it.
Wait a minute. Do the middle schoolers want their parents in the picture?
They all have to get the ball practice.
Go get the ball practice. Congratulations, guys. Great job. Thank you.
Members of the board, you can see why robotics is one of our more popular academic programs, and it's a great example of how STEAM goes on in all of our schools: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. In addition to these two teams, robotics teams from Belmont Central, W.A. Bess, Bessemer City Central, New Hope, Pinewood, and Rankin will be joining them in advancing in further competition. We want to congratulate all of our winners and wish them good luck as they move forward. Next, the North Carolina Science and Engineering Fair participants. We want to recognize a group of students who will compete this coming weekend in the State Fair in Meredith College in Raleigh. They've advanced through our local competition, then at UNC Charlotte through the district event, and now they will represent us at the state. We have 4 of the 10 students who will represent us, and these 4 are from Stuart W. Kramer. It's Bradley Parrish, Alexandra Thomas, Grace LeBleu, and Julia Short.
Now we're up to high school. We can tell robotics is working out. Now y'all are living a whole new life with STEM programs. And good luck this weekend in Raleigh. I was just up there this weekend, went right by Meredith College. You'll love the campus, it's a beautiful campus. We got girl power here too, man. But on behalf of our school board, we'd like to recognize y'all guys as the regional winners for Science and Engineering Fair 2017 and at UNCC and going forward to the state. And Alexandra Thomas.
Thank you.
Grace LeBleu. Julie Shore.
Thank you.
And Bradley Parrish. Thank you, everybody.
Now, Mr. Ramsey, you may recall last year Ashbrook had a student make it all the way to the International Science Fair where she won a silver award for her research. So there's a little pressure on the team to continue that.
He won't lie.
Last one. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good luck to you. Congratulations. Good luck to you. Congratulations.
Way to go. Good luck. Yeah. Boy, he went home from spring break and mama cried. That's our boy. Oh, yeah.
Members of the board, you need to recognize this is the 9th year that we have had the science fair, and each year our participation has continued to increase. So as we approach our 10-year anniversary, we look for great things, again, out of this super program that is made possible by several corporate sponsors that we really appreciate what they do. Next is one that is really neat. If you haven't seen our art program and need what is going on, this individual represents great things. So if I could invite Cammie Tart up, and she has her teacher with them, and I tell you, he was prouder than she was that next day. It is our honor to let you know that you have before you a Silver Key National Art Award. There's a picture of her art on the screen here in the boardroom for you to see. She was one of our 34 winners in the regional, which is the entire Charlotte region. We had 34 winners, and she advanced to the national competition where she received this Silver Key Award. This is an incredible piece of work, and winning this is really incredible because it's a national award and a national recognition. We're proud of her. We're also proud of the East Gaston Art Program, and it had numerous people to submit. Just so you know, overall, we had 12 gold keys, 11 silver keys, and 11 honorable mentions at the regional level, and you now have a national winner in your midst. So we appreciate all of our art.
I'm going to go with the nickname. Cammie, congratulations. Justin, congratulations to you. Could you tell us a little bit more about the award and how many people you had to compete against?
I'm not sure. I think the number was across the nation 330,000 submissions. And gold gets top 5 and silver gets the next 5. So top 10% in the nation.
Well,
And go ahead and brag on your colleagues in the regional fair.
Yeah, Gaston County, we brought it. We brought it. 34, and we're right up there with all the art high schools in Charlotte and Gaston Day, and we're right there.
Well, we're just
right
very,
beside
very proud
them.
of that.
Mr. Debman, he's not telling all the story. The regional selects 10 pieces of art that will be placed on billboards across the region. Of the 10, 2 of them are going to be from Gaston County.
Find out what you're going to do for next year. But on behalf of the Board of Education, we'd like to present you with this plaque, Cammie. Congratulations. Very proud of you, Justin. Thank you, too. There you go. And the assistant principal is also here.
Thank you.
Right. Have them come up here and get your picture made, son.
One more. Thank you.
Cammie, welcome right here and shake everybody's hand. I'm very proud of you. Good job. Thanks.
Next, we have some of our emerging leaders for you all to meet. Last year, we decided to provide a professional development opportunity for our assistant principals who aspire to become principals in Gaston County. We had 16 assistant principals involved in this leadership program, and tonight we have with us April Conley. If you all will come forward as you're called. April Conley, Chris Dixon, Dawn Lavender, Allison Ryan, Jessica Mellon, Lisa Rothwell, Megan LaFevers, Miranda Buchanan, Nikisha Glenn, Patrick Watson, Siobhan O'Brien, Todd Goff, Tanel Olenfant, and Michael McDermott. Michael make it today? He's not. And then we also have Carolyn Black and Franny Dackenow were both members of this who are now serving as principals. Part of this is our commitment to grow our own and to invest in those that we have. And I believe that two of the members are prepared to give us a little background on how the program works. If I could ask you to step to the mic.
Good evening. My name is Siobhan O'Brien. I'm the assistant principal at Mount Holly Middle School. I just wanted to say that I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the Leadership Academy. This experience has made me reflect on who I am as a leader and has also helped me build a deeper understanding of the principal role. In addition, it has provided me the opportunity to build a network of colleagues that I can go to for support and guidance. I would say my greatest takeaway from this would be the knowledge gained from the panel discussions. I feel that learning from other leaders will help me addressing situations appropriately when I am a principal. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Dixon. I'm the assistant principal at Holbrook Middle School, and I just wanted to share a little bit about our experience together in helping others in need. During this cohort, we sponsored a service project in where we networked with our feeder systems, our feeder schools, to collect school supplies for two schools in Robeson County, one being W.H. Knuckles Elementary and the other one being East Robeson Elementary School. We collected as many school supplies as we possibly could. We filled a rental van from Enterprise from front to back. Myself and Dr. Conley drove down, took the day to deliver those items. And I'm going to tell you something, when you're involved in something like that, it very much makes you appreciate what you have. That area was very heavily damaged and devastated by the floods, and they were very appreciative of everything that we were able to supply to them. So.
We thank you for being with us this evening, and we appreciate all that you currently do as leaders and look to the growth of leadership. And Mr. Hagans has some certificates for you, and I'm going to come down because this was part of my initiative to develop leaders. Where's our photographer? We're going to have to type it. How am I going to do a picture? Well, I'm sure Patrick has to be on the back row.
2 rows. That's all right. It's not us. Oh, good try. Am I too tall? That's a good try.
All right. Here. Yeah, just like that, sorry. Good. Big smile. And one more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Look forward to your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to your leadership. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the honor. Thank you all for your leadership. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank
Way to go.
Mr. Collier, that concludes the good news for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booker, for all that wonderful news. The next item on our agenda is public expression. I need to read the procedures for rules and procedures for public expression. Citizens wishing to make comment and who have completed a request to speak form will be recognized by the chair and then requested to step to the microphone for their comments. Citizens will state their name and address for records. Your time will not be started until after this is stated. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The members of the board The members of the board do not respond to public expression during public expression. Public expression does not allow for comments on confidential or personnel matters. The chair shall rule on all points of order during the public expression. I have 3 people who've signed up for public expression, and the first person is Shelton Davis.
Good evening. My name is Shelton Davis of 119 Quincy Drive in Belmont. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much to the Board of Education for all that you do. It is truly a pleasure to have 2 children in Gaston County Schools who are succeeding and thriving because of the work that you do and the wonderful teachers and administrators that they work with each day. I'm here to advocate tonight for your continued efforts to build Belmont Middle School on the contracted South Point property. Land at Stuart Kramer has been owned for some time, and I know that this Board of Education didn't build Belmont Middle School there because it wasn't in the best interests of the children of Gaston County. Having 2 middle schools in such close proximity while leaving the fastest growing area in our county without a middle school is simply ridiculous. I have spent the last several weeks talking with parents and taxpayers in both Belmont and in Cramerton. And to a person, I've yet to find anyone who supports putting this school on the Stuart Kramer property. The people of Cramerton would like to see that property sold and developed commercially to improve the appeal of their town. The people of Belmont would like to continue to see their children and grandchildren educated in and around their town. I would just like to please ask you to continue to work, get creative, whatever you have to do, to please continue that, the idea of putting that particular middle school on that property. I know that there are complications and that this is a big issue with lots and lots of layers, but I would ask that you would please continue to fight the good fight for the benefit of the children of Belmont. Thank you so much.
The next person I have to speak is the Honorable Charlie Martin.
I don't know about honorable, but I'm here.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it. Appreciate all you do, too, because I know it's a very thankless job sometimes. It really is. We know what that's
Mr.
like.
Martin,
on
if you can state your address, please, for the record.
Sure, is that better? Okay. I know I had a big mouth, but this will make it easier, right? I want to thank you for your ability to rationalize when you made the decision about potentially putting the school down on South Point Road where the growth is coming. There's a lot of houses coming down, about 1,500. If those kids have to come all the way past South Point High School, past Belmont Central School, and past Stuart Kramer High School to get to a middle school, that's not going to be a good thing. You talk about traffic problems. It's going to be a lot worse than what it is right now, that's for sure. We have the land ready down there to go ahead and use to put a school. And the topography is fine. The infrastructure is in place. It only makes common sense to put it down there because that's where the growth is coming. You have to go where the growth is coming. And I know that the commissioners sometimes have a little different outlook on things, but I appreciate you guys if you'll stay the course on that, and hopefully we can make a decision as far as getting the land down South Point Road to be able to build, if nothing else, a middle school, but hopefully eventually an elementary school, which we're going to soon need too, because we're busting at the seams with Belmont Central and with Page Elementary as well, the K to 2. So anyway, thank you, and just give some consideration to that, please, and work with the commissioners on that to see if we can't get this deal done. Okay, thank you.
All right, the next speaker is Aaron Russell.
Hello, Erin Russell, 23 Circle Drive in Belmont, and I am here to talk about the middle school in Belmont, but I have a quick point of pride. I was at lunch today with the teacher education recruiter for UNC Charlotte, and she said to me when she heard that my daughter had been a student at South Point, "Oh, I had Mr. Kavnar come to an event that I hosted for potential future teachers. He is amazing." So I know we kind of all know that, and especially in Gaston County, but it made me feel really good that that's kind of the person who represents the system when I said where my daughter went to school. So that's just a throw-in. I'm really here to kind of point out, I think you all know this is a once-in-a-generation decision as to where we site a middle school for our students. And everything I've heard in the community is the support is for the location by South Point. I urge you to move forward with that proposal and formally propose that back to the County Commission. For those of you who may have been at the special meeting that the County Commissioners held, you may have heard that my legal analysis is that their vote has no meaning. They acted outside their statutory authority. It is not for the County Commission to tell you where to put a school. That duty sits under the statutes of North Carolina with the boards of education. So I support all the work you're doing for the South Point site, and I urge you to continue. I believe the motion of the commissioners carries no weight. I hope it doesn't sway this board. South Point makes sense for the community, for the students, and for the future. And I hope that you can find a way to work with supporters to educate people in the community about the economic advantages, the educational advantages, and the locational advantages that the site at South Point has. I believe that once people have a fuller understanding of the options and how they can play off each other financially, that you'll be able to win over some support and have a school that the city of Belmont sorely needs. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is to approve or correct the minutes from February 6th, 2017, and the minutes from February 20th, 2017. Yes, I'll take one motion for both, unless anybody on the board objects. That's a motion by Ms. Cherry.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ramsey. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor show by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. The next item is a classroom moment. This is information. Dr. Balknight.
Good evening, Chairman Collier, Superintendent Booker, and members of the board. Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome Lowell Elementary School to share information with you about their lab sites that we've been working on at Lowell for now 2 years. I'm going to ask our Executive Director, Ms. Jody Edwards, to come up. Jody will introduce the school. This is something that we are continuing to move beyond Lowell, but Lowell is the school that teachers come from throughout the district to observe and watch, so they're going to share some great things with you tonight, and this is another point of pride for Gaston County.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We are so excited to be here. Thank you. Tonight, we want to give you just a glimpse of the journey that many of our teachers here in Gaston County have embarked upon, a journey of learning for teachers. Tonight, you will learn about an innovative type of professional development that allows teachers to learn from one another through a collaborative process called Lab Site PD. Even though we have several schools that have started this journey, Lowell Elementary has been the forerunner. Their teachers have been willing to not only engage in this hard, important work, but to share their knowledge and to share their expertise by opening up their classroom doors to educators across our district. And if you have ever been a classroom teacher, you know how nervous that can be. So we're so very proud of them because what they have done is they have really started something to help all of the students here in Gaston County. And we want to celebrate them tonight. I love this quote. Better than 1,000 days of diligent study is one day with a great teacher. Well, you have several great teachers here tonight. Let me introduce you to these educators. Now, Mr. Hagens, I need you to listen to this because do you know all of us standing here, we're homegrown. We are products of Gaston County schools, so we're very proud of that. Shannon Hollett is one of our elementary ELA curriculum facilitators who has worked for Gaston County Schools for 19 years. She has served as a teacher, a learning coach, and a curriculum facilitator. Roxanne Jemison is proud to have served as an educator for Gaston County Schools for 31 years. She has served as a teacher assistant, a classroom teacher, a literacy facilitator, an assistant principal, and now the principal of Lowell Elementary. Donna Hayes is a 36-year veteran educator with 26 years here in Gaston County Public Schools. She is a National Board Certified teacher, currently teaching first grade at Lowell Elementary. Amber Manoff is not only a product of Gaston County Schools, but she attended Lowell Elementary, where she teaches today. She's been there for 9 years, and we are very proud of them, and I hope you're ready for some exciting news tonight.
So as a curriculum facilitator, one of my job responsibilities is to provide professional development for our district. And with a district this large, the most common type of professional development that I most likely provide is one that you see in this picture here, whole group PD. And something that I've learned over the last couple years is this type of PD alone, it just doesn't work. In a recent study, researchers surveyed teachers and found 90% of teachers that participated in this type of professional development only reported that that type of professional development was useless. So why? Why? Well, this type of professional development alone merely exposes teachers to a new idea or a new concept, and then we just hope that they go back into their classrooms and they implement it. Well, we don't want to just hope. We want to make it happen. So what does that look like? In 2014 and 15, we sought out our administrators. We needed their help. We needed everybody to be on board with professional development and growing our teachers. So we started a book study with our principals, and we utilized this book here. And through this book study, we learned that it takes 4 types of professional development to really impact teacher practice and affect student learning. So those different types of models are whole group, collaborative planning, professional learning communities, small study groups, and lab site work. And when we provide teachers with all 4 of these together, it's a win situation. And we are going to impact teacher learning, and we're going to see the results in student growth. So Principal Roxanne Jemison, she was on board. She was a part of the book study, and she took this research and she ran with it. She took it back to her school, and she began to implement it. And what we have seen is true transformation. I have seen teachers grow like they never have before, and I am seeing the results in the classroom with student learning. So thank you, Roxanne. Thank you, Lowell Elementary, and I am so excited for you to hear about the transformation that's happening at Lowell.
The year that we were in the book study at principals meetings was my first year at Lowell Elementary. By mid-year, the teachers and I had set a goal for changing our methods for reading instruction. Our goal had two parts. We wanted first to be able to provide consistent reading instruction from one grade to the next. And our second part of the goal was to create a love of reading in all of our students. So at the time that we're setting this goal, I'm involved in the book study learning about lab sites. It was perfect timing because I could envision how we could use lab sites to grow our teachers to meet this goal. By September 2015, we had a plan. We were going to focus on reading workshop. We received the units of study for the teaching of reading. We received a one-day training for all staff, and we implemented reading workshop all in 1 month. By the second week of our implementation, we started lab sites. Teachers opened their classroom doors to allow their colleagues, their teammates, to come in and observe them teaching reading workshop. After each observation, teachers would meet as a team and debrief about what was just observed. Now keep in mind, as these teachers are opening their classroom door to allow their colleagues to come in, they're just learning a new practice and putting it into practice. But that's the purpose of lab sites, to allow teachers to grow and learn together. Since 2015, for the past 2 years, we have focused on the 4 types of professional development. We've provided whole group training for staff, we've provided collaborative planning, and we've provided lab sites followed by debriefs. And as a result, we have seen total success with our training. We have teachers across our school. The entire staff has changed how they're teaching reading. So we have used those 4 methods to do exactly what we wanted to do. And I want to let our teachers share with you about the change and the impact it's having on our school and our students.
Thank you for allowing me to share today. Over the past 10 years, I've been involved in so many different types of professional development opportunities, and no other professional development has changed my day-to-day practices the way that lab sites have. When Ms. Jemison first brought the idea of lab sites to us, I was a little unsure, a little uncomfortable about letting my colleagues come in and see my classroom and critique me and give me feedback. But I quickly realized the best way to grow is to get out of your comfort zone. Hearing that constructive feedback from my colleagues has really helped me perfect my craft, and it's really turned me into a much more reflective teacher. I've been at Lowell for almost 10 years now, and I've never seen our staff so united. We're all working towards the same goal. There's this awesome culture of collaboration among not only our grade levels, but among the whole staff. Lowell Elementary isn't a place where we come in and we shut our doors and we do our own thing. We really work together, we grow together, and we really work to do what is best for our students.
Good evening, all of y'all. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and with my many years of experience as a classroom teacher, I've never been a part of a professional development that is as hands-on and that incorporates teacher accountability as classroom lab sites. The classroom lab sites have allowed us to take inside looks into other teachers' classrooms and learn from them. Last year, we focused on grade level reader workshop components and perfecting our craft. We have learned to observe other teachers, make notes, and constructively critique other teachers. This year, we have expanded this professional development model by implementing vertical lab sites. These lab sites have allowed us to take a closer look at how upcoming students are being prepared for Reader's Workshop and how we can prepare our own students for the coming year. The lab sites are providing veteran teachers like myself and new teachers to collaborate like never seen before. The collaboration is phenomenal. I have never seen teachers that work together like we have at Lowell for the past 2 years. My hope is that all teachers embrace lab sites and that they can experience lab sites as professional development as I have been fortunate to do so at Lowell. Now, I know that many of you have been to our lab sites and you've seen Reader's Workshop, but I encourage all of you to come because it is amazing what it is doing to kids. We are putting that book in kids and the love of reading. So I encourage everyone on the board and everyone out there to come and visit our lab sites because you will truly be amazed at what you'll see. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Ms. Cherry, questions or comments? Ms. Cherry.
Well, Donna, you stole my thunder, because that's what I was going to say. You talked about how y'all were enjoying it, but I saw how the kids were enjoying it. I went into your class, and you had them all in different groups, and the teachers were all around them, but they were all engaged. And they weren't just chit-chatting among themselves. They were actually doing things and thoroughly enjoying it. And then I went to an older classroom, and they were just engrossed in the teacher and what she was telling them. And that's nice to see. So I concur with you. They definitely are enjoying as they're learning. So thank you.
Ms. Guthrie.
First of all, I just want to applaud you again for the effort and for what you're doing. I heard hope, happen, and later on from another presenter, I heard united. And that's what I could see through your presentation, hope, happen, and united. And you know, to me, not only were the children enjoying it, you seem to be enjoying what you do from the principal all the way down to the child. And I think that's contagious. Also, I know, Ms. Jemison, is that right? You did that One Book, One School several years ago, and I believe a little bit of that is just.
We're doing it right now. At Lowell.
All right.
Come join us.
Okay, so that was good. Also, the vertical lab sites, I like hearing about that because not only are you doing it at the grade level, but you're looking at ways to continue to enhance what you're doing throughout your grade levels, and I like that. Thank you.
One of the things, Ms. Guthrie, that I saw last year, and it had been about midway in, I went for another meeting, and I literally could not make it down the hallway without teachers stopping me and sharing what they had been doing and how much their children are reading. If you go to Lowell and they're doing independent reading and you sit down to read with a child, be ready to stay there a while because that child is going to continue to tell you about their book. The growth in not only the teachers but the students has been amazing. I've been doing this a long time, and this is probably one of the most exciting forms of professional development that I've ever been, had the honor to be a part of. They've done a tremendous job this year.
So are you inviting other schools to observe so that they can take back to apply?
We have actually 8 other schools this year that have been involved in visiting, from the administrators down to the teachers, and they have been in their classrooms, and that's what's so cool. We have maybe sometimes 12 adults in a classroom observing, and those students, they just roll with it. And the teachers have done a tremendous job, and that's a lot to put on a teacher, so we are so proud of them, and we are bringing more schools on board this year. We're very excited.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation. All right, the next items on our agendas are the committee reports, and the first one up is the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Ms. Guthrie.
Mr. Chair, board colleagues, Superintendent Booker, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting was held on March 16th. Members present, Dot Guthrie, Melissa Bognight, Dot Cherry, Catherine Roberts, Lolita Williams. Others present, James Montgomery, Jody Edwards, Lee Smith, Glennis Brooks, and Brett Buchanan. The meeting was called to order at 4:30 p.m. A motion was made and second to approve the minutes from the February 7th, 2017 meeting with a unanimous vote. Career Technical Education updates explain how students receive credentials for technical attainment. The Department of CTE is working to provide more offerings at Yorkchester Middle School. Information was presented to move the high school grading periods from 6 weeks to 9 weeks and provide interim reports every 3 weeks. State law mandates the last 5 days of the semester for high school exams. The high school final exam schedules and a recommendation to make the final exam weight 20% will be presented to the full board as a consent action item. A move from the valedictorian and salutatorian designations to the Latin honors designations are being explored to begin with the class 2019. This will be presented to the full board as an information item. Summer enrichment camps will be offered to families at no charge. The camps will be half-day sessions for 5 days. Information about camps will be mailed to all families. A motion was made to adjourn and seconded by a unanimous vote. The meeting adjourned at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Is there any questions from board members? With none, we'll move on to our next agenda item, and that is the Operations Committee report. Mr. Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Committee met a long time ago, 2.5 hours to be exact. In the Operations Committee today, we looked at our minutes from last month. We got an update on Pleasant Ridge construction by Mr. Garrett. Currently, construction at Pleasant Ridge is on time and is also on budget. So those are two major factors that we like to see that are coming along. A lot of progress going on. If you drive by, you can actually see stuff from the road now, which is encouraging. Next item we had an update on was the Stanley Middle School project. With the Stanley Middle School project, it is on budget. It is 2 months behind because of some moving of power lines, some funding issues that we're waiting on the county commissioners from, and then some weather. On this Friday, 10 a.m., we have a hard hat tour scheduled. So if any board members would like to attend that, if you will let me know so that we can make sure that the central office staff and Dr. Richard has safety gear for us out there, because we have to wear a little bit of safety gear. But that'll be 10 o'clock Friday morning. Following that, we talked about, got an update on the capital needs for the system-wide on our capital needs list. And then set a next meeting date for April the 10th, 4 o'clock. That's open to all, where we're going to start taking a look at what some of our options are concerning future capital needs or Belmont Middle School and sites. So that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Any questions? With none, we'll move to the next agenda item. Update on the land purchase for new middle school in Belmont.
Thank you, Chairman Collier, Vice Chairman Ramsey, members of the board, Superintendent Booker. Just want to provide an update on where we are in regard to the replacement proposal for Belmont Middle School. As you know, the current site that we have been discussing consists of 78 acres located off of South Point Road near South Point High School. First thing I'd like to do is really just talk about the timeline and where we have been in this process. This process actually started in October when our outside counsel made contact with MB Realty, who had the contract to purchase that land. The initial discussion was to buy one half of the subject property, the front part, which consists of 38 acres. In November, the Gaston County Board of Commissioners publicly directed the county manager to begin the process of issuing $40 million in bonds to help support the replacement of Belmont Middle School. Later in November, this board provided the superintendent with the authorization to enter into a contract with MB Realty to buy the 38 acres for $65,000 an acre, pending county funding and pending our due diligence of the property. MB Realty later declined that offer and only proposed that we either buy the entire 78 acres or walk away from the deal. We looked at the appraisal on this property. The offer of $65,000 an acre for the 78 acres is about 85% of the appraised value of the property. This is based on an appraisal that was done in December by a Charlotte firm with 2 MAI appraisers, which is the highest level of certification that you can get as an appraiser. And so this board decided to enter into a contract with MB Realty for the 78 acres, and the initial closing date was scheduled for February 27th. Later in February, we completed the due diligence. I think we had an update, the last board meeting. No items of concern were noted. So we were past the original, or getting close to being past the original closing date. So we agreed to extend the closing date to March 31st, which is later this month. March 6th, this board invited the county commissioners to his work session to discuss the funding for the subject site. One of the results of that was the creation of an ad hoc committee to discuss the options for Belmont Middle School, and that committee did meet on March 8th. Later on March 10th, we submitted to the county commissioners an agenda item specifically requesting that they vote on the purchase of the property, the 78 acres of land, which is roughly $5.1 million. And also later on March 10th, the county commissioners met and authorized the school board to apply for the necessary permits to construct a middle school on the site adjacent to Stuart Cramer High School in Cramerton. So right now, we have the agenda item has been sent to the county commissioners, and it is in their control as to whether that ends up on the agenda, whether it's voted on, or what action is taken. So that is where we are, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions or comments? Mr. Howell.
Point of clarification, if I could, Mr. Hoskins. You said in your time on October the 3rd, MB Realty entered into a contract with the seller of the property for the 78 acres. On October the 5th, your presentation states that the attorney approached MB Realty, but in the Brinjwat Snover PLC letter that we have, it doesn't clarify who approached who. So did our real estate attorney approach MB Realty, or did MB Realty approach our attorney 2 days later? And then, if that's the case, how did our attorney know that property was for sale? Was it listed by the developer?
Would have to discuss that with the attorney. I'm not sure if we contacted MB Realty or MB Realty contacted us, but on October 5th, contact was made between our outside counsel and MB Realty.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Roberts.
Okay, so on the 10th, commissioners voted down this property. So now we're asking them to put it on their agenda. Were there conversations that I haven't heard about to where they're considering changing their mind about this property? Or have we gotten support from commissioners that I'm unaware of to where they may change their mind? Or are we just asking again? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
We have not formally submitted an agenda item to the county commissioners asking them to approve the purchase of this property, and that is what we have outstanding with them at this time. This March 10th meeting came about before we were able to get that, and I think they had canceled some other meetings for other reasons in February. So we've been trying to get on the agenda, and this is really the only time that we've been able to do so.
Okay, well, again, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding what's going on. So we're still continuing to talk about the 78 acres. We're not looking at other options. Is Operations Committee looking at other options? Because something was said just now about possible sites for Belmont Middle. That may be a question for you, I guess, Chris.
Well, first, let me, Mr. Brinjwat couldn't be here tonight. He's at another town hall meeting. But he says we are still under contract with MB Realty. And our contract says that on March the 28th, the county commission has to approve or not approve this property. So legally, we are still under contract. And they will either have to put it on their agenda to vote for it. And I've been told that by several of them that they do not intend to put it on their agenda, which means if they take no action, then the contract will expire on the 31st per the terms in the contract. And that's what Mr. Brinjwat has explained to me. Gary, is there anything?
No, that is correct. Until March 31st, until some resolution is made by March 31st or no resolution is made, then we can continue with other options. But until then, we're pursuing this option until this is voted up or down by the county commissioners or not voted upon.
So the March 10th meeting for what they voted on. So you're saying they're going to have to vote again or not put it on their agenda? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, to clarify from Mr. Brinjwat, it is a legal binding contract, and the action they took last Friday did not vote down the contract, and it did not do anything to break the contract or say no to the contract we have in place. They either have to vote to fund it, to agree to the contract and fund it, or not. Or if they take no action, the contract will, because it's time of the essence, will expire.
Okay, this will be my last question, I'm sorry. Are we already preparing for backup? Because it sounds like on 28th, they're probably not going to put it on the agenda. So are we waiting until the 28th, or is Operations Committee going ahead and looking at stuff?
Mr. Howe?
No, so let me clarify. Several of us on this board have made some of our thoughts known in the paper under My Turn articles, which the Gazette has published. In that, I made a personal observation and what some of our options I felt like as a board member could be. The Operations Committee talked today. One of the things that we know that we have to do as Operations Committee and we have to do as a board is we're going to be tasked that if this property does not get put on the agenda, which Mr. Brown has made it clear when we met in here on the meeting prior to their meeting on the 10th, which I believe was maybe the 6th, that he would green sheet it, but that now they made that action on the 10th, it's probably not going on there. The Operations Committee feels the necessity to make sure that we are moving towards an alternative solution. One solution being, can we find other property? This board has talked about that, what the contingencies are on that. We met at the ad hoc committee with the commissioners. Even their EDC gentleman, Mr. Donnie Hicks, said that to go out and locate another piece of property and to validate that property with due diligence would be almost impossible with the time frame that they're looking at. Some of the commissioners put an option on the table that this board at some point is going to have to make public on what our decision is with that. There's a $190 million plus capital needs that could be an option in there. So the Operations Committee is not sitting back waiting on somebody else to do something and us make a decision after that. We're being proactive and reactive to what they're doing, but we're trying to line some stuff up in the box that we can bring to the board. And I think at some point in the next 4 or 5 weeks, it's going to have to be board activity, not just an operations activity, where we actually talk about what then with the $40 million, because this system has some great needs, and the Operations Committee agreed to that. This system could put some dents in some of those needs with $40 million. But to leave $40 million on the table and have it expire and not put some dents into needed facilities or needed facility updates, we're not being very diligent with what we were elected to do. So we are moving ahead in the process of talking about things. That is the purpose of the April 10th meeting, because we'll be past the commissioners' March 28th meeting. So you're more than welcome to come to that. And we'll provide that information as quick as we can, but we are being proactive in trying to say, what can we do? As the operations chair, I'll take any input from anybody on this board and how you think some recommendations could go towards that. I will tell you this. I've been looking in the Belmont area, contacting people, saying, hey, if we add this to that, can we get this? It's looking slim right now. And we know that the commissioners, what the outlook looks with that. So I do think this board needs to start thinking outside the box, inside the box, and figure out what we're going to do next. So.
I'll just say something to Mr. Howell. This is the best piece of property for the Belmont Middle School replacement, and it's a fair price. I've spoken with a lot of the commissioners as well as some of our board members. We still have some time, even with this contract when it expires. There's still some hope that a middle school could still be built on that site because we're going to have to use a template from an existing middle school that we're building now, and it will be able to, it'll allow us to ramp things up. But I am hopeful that we can get a Belmont Middle School replacement built on the property that's under contract. It doesn't look good today, I'll say that, but we're still talking and we're still working to see if there's any options, anything that we or they can bring to the table to build that school on that property in Belmont, down South Point Road that's under contract today. And that's just my opinion, but I'd be willing to hear anybody else from the board. Ms. Cherry.
I concur with Mr. Collier. I hope that we stay strong and united until the end on the Belmont property. While I agree with Mr. Howell that we should have a Plan B, C, and D, that we should stick to Plan A, which is to secure that property as long as we can. And hopefully we can turn some minds and convince them that it is the only property, it's the best property, and it's the right thing to do at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Guthrie.
I realize that an ad hoc committee was formed and that the board and some of the commissioners met. And I think at that time you did present some concerns before the commissioners. And I think that some of the city and some of the officials from the Belmont area came to that meeting, am I right? Well, is it possible to hold a town hall meeting in Belmont with the commissioners and just point out to them some of the positive reasons for wanting to maintain the land that's already been approved? Would they be willing to sit down and work with some of the constituents in Belmont? Is it possible? We all know that we have done everything possible to make certain that the land was appropriate and feasible, the site was feasible. I do not understand why it's so difficult now to get adults together and to look holistically at the main reason for wanting to build that school where we've already located a site for learning. Did we make the effort to meet with those commissioners there in Belmont with the Belmont officials?
Mr. Dedman.
Ms. Guthrie, the commissioners took public expression at the meeting last week, and there were 15 people, and 11 of them were real supportive of the school. So I think I think most people have let the commissioners know what their intent is from Belmont. So I don't know if, we can't control that board to get them to go meet with anybody.
I know.
But I just wanted you to know that there was a lot of support for building the school on that property and for buying that and putting the money out to buy that property last week.
I just don't understand.
Mr. Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we all know, in November, we all voted unanimously for that property. And the reason why, we knew when you replace a school with a new school, the first thing we try to do is get the closest to the property that we're replacing, and also in the city limits. And this is the only property that we was able to find that fits our needs. And a lot of people has talked about we're paying too much money or so, but we've done a lot of schools, we had to put a lot of money up front. This property is ready to be built on today. Water and sewer is right in front of it, so you don't have to build a pump station. The property, you don't have to move dirt. You got a 21-acre pad sitting there for a school to be dropped on. You're talking a couple $1 million in savings up front. So on the front end, you look like you're paying a little bit, but really you're not. And the other thing, I wanted to clarify something. This $40,000 has been floating around a lot. And this is why we just got on the agenda. The county commissioners was attending a conference in D.C. in February. We couldn't get on there. So that's why we had to extend the contract. That's the only reason we extended the contract. So I just wanted to clarify that part. But also, the Belmont community deserves this. They've been waiting since 1937 for a new school. I think that's the oldest school in the county. Also, they have the second oldest school in high school, is South Point High School. Now, the third thing, they're the fastest growing part of our county. We have 1,500 houses being built within 5 years. We're at full capacity in the Belmont community right now. We have to seize the moment, and today is the day, and I hope the county commissioner have the foresight to see that and not be about communication and all that. It's about the kids and about our parents and the citizens of our county, to be fair to them. Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Howell?
Mr. Ramsey's correct that in November, we did unanimously vote to purchase that property, and we unanimously voted to purchase the front half of that property at $2.5 million, give or take 1,000. I don't know what it was. And to me, that was somewhat swallowable. We later learned in January that it was going to be an all or nothing. I believed then that that was the best property. I think the issue that we're up against here, we made great strides to improve the Monday night we met with the commissioners, and that was establishing a greater line of communication with a little more accountability on who's communicating and who's hearing. And we did that in the meeting with them, and we did that in the ad hoc committee that we tried to establish the following Wednesday. I do believe that some of the issues with this property, and probably the reason it's going to be hard for them to pass, is some transparency, or what appears, because I think a lot of what we deal with is perception of transparency. There's a community in Gaston County that have different perceptions on what has transpired, what's happened, why it happened, and those sort of things. I think with that being said, I agree that the South Point Road piece of property is a very good piece of property for the front half for that school. I also see the commissioner's point of view of why they don't want to approve that. So with that being said, I think it's important, even tonight going forward, that this board is very cognizant and aware of the fact that the last thing we need to do is rub some old wounds or create any new ones. I think that if we could figure out how to do this, build a school in Belmont, I think the community, Gaston County as a whole, knows that it needs to be replaced. If we can figure out how to do that and do it to where it's good for the school system and do it where it's good for the citizens, then I think that's what we need to do. But I also believe that if 78 acres can't be purchased on that piece of property, then we need to be diligent in figuring out what's next. And so I don't want us to give up, but I don't want us to get staked out. And I think in going forward, whatever that next plan, if it has to be a next plan, has to be done, we need to continue the relationship with the county commissioners, whether it be an ad hoc committee, a sit-down meeting, or what the case might be, because I know personally in discussing that property that I met with the commissioner, I met with the mayor, talked about where that piece of property was and what the cost was, and somehow either that didn't get translated back through those appropriate people, or it did and wasn't paid attention to. I'm not sure how that works. I just know that when we sit down one-on-one as a group and we meet with those guys, it takes all ambiguity out of the air and allows us to put it on the table and say, this is what we're dealing with, and this is why. It takes questions away from this board, and it takes questions away from that board. Final comment, and then I'll shut up for the moment. I will assume some of the responsibility in this situation being south right now. I think as a board member, I didn't ask some of the right questions at some of the right times, or didn't get points of clarification. And I think in that it's bothered me somewhat, and it won't happen again. So, but I want to publicly say that I accept some of the responsibility of the frustration on the Gastonia side, and the Cramerton side, and the government side, and some of the frustration on the Belmont side. So with that, I'll be quiet.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Hoskins, thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next agenda item. It's the Latin Honors. Dr. Baltnight.
Good evening, Chairman Collier, Superintendent Booker, and board members. At this time, I'm going to invite Mr. Montgomery up. He's our Executive Director of K-12 with a focus on high schools, and he's going to share some information with you this evening about Latin Honors, which is an information item on your agenda tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Baltnight, Mr. Collier, Mr. Booker, members of the board. Tonight, we are pleased to offer for your information some information concerning something we are already doing. That's the Latin Honors, and then a recommendation for the current class of sophomores, which will be the graduating class of 2019, to eliminate the use of the word valedictorian and salutatorian at the graduation ceremony. If you'll look on the screen, we already utilize Latin Honors recognition, and we are making no recommendation to make changes to that. To discontinue the use of valedictorian and salutatorian beginning with the class of 2019, that's our current 10th graders. This will reflect more accurate comparison among students. This is the current designation for what you hear at the graduation ceremonies for summa cum laude, magna cum laude, and cum laude, and we have had this in order for several years now and making no recommendations to change this moving forward. If you'll look on the screen, I know that's a little bit busy, but I do think it's important to recognize that the state has made this change with respect to AP course offerings and college and career promise, your CCP course offerings for all of the districts across the state of North Carolina, beginning with our current sophomores, which is the alignment for what we are moving forward with in our recommendation. The current set of students under the current list is what is listed on your left, and that's what we currently know as. For an AP course, if they get an A, they're going to receive 2 additional quality points, giving that 6.0. The letter grade of B will mean a 5.0, and you can read the chart. For CCP courses, it is not as high as the AP courses. That's where the change lies. They are making all of the honors and CCP and your AP courses exactly the same. So if you look on the far right, you can see that you now have AP and college and career promise courses at a letter grade of A as 5, 4 for a B, and 3. The next slide will show you exactly what that would mean in real terms for a student. This is a semester's worth of courses for a student. AP Physics, AP English 12, a college and career promise course that happens to be criminal justice, and then band. If they take the same letter grade, B, A, and A, with the current weight, that gives them 5, 6, 5, and 4 with an overall GPA ranking of 5.0. Under the new requirements the state of North Carolina has put in place, that would now be 4, 5, 5, 4 with an overall quality point rating of 4.5. And you can see how many of you have been to a graduation ceremony with co-valedictorians or co-salutatorians, and in some cases it goes to 3, and in some cases more. And that is with the differentiation of AP course offerings versus CCP and the different weights. Currently, imagine what's going to happen when we take all of that and marry that into one. The possibilities moving forward is what we are preparing for in this recommendation, and that is you have the likelihood of having more co-valedictorians and co-salutatorians. If you combine that with the incredible opportunities that online learning brings for students to take multiple courses beyond 4, 5, 6, 7, you could see the potential for a real issue in managing how we recognize students at the graduation ceremonies. So what we are recommending is where you see the word salutatorian and valedictorian for the senior class of 2019 in 2 more school years is to no longer use those words. I would also remind you that not one of those words shows up on a high school transcript. Not one of those words is going to prevent or add to a student's ability to gain scholarship money, grant opportunities, their FAFSA. So there's really only one place that the word valedictorian and salutatorian appears, and that is when we say it out loud in recognizing the number 1 ranked and the number 2 ranked students at the graduation ceremony. So we're making a recommendation to make no change to Latin honors moving forward and to simply do away with the use of the word valedictorian and salutatorian for the senior class of 2019 and beyond.
And this is an information item, so Mr. Montgomery and I will take questions at this time.
Mr. Howell.
I don't know how to form my question because I'm a little torn on taking this recognition away. And maybe it's because neither one of my kids were, but not for that reason. I've had a lot of kids in my student ministry that were either valedictorian or salutatorian at North Gaston. Matter of fact, one young lady, her brother was valedictorian. She turned around and was valedictorian several years later, and she was valedictorian at North Carolina State, where our university systems still recognize valedictorians within their program. These kids work hard. Some work hard to be state champions in football or swimming and track, and we don't take that away from them. They get the state championship medal, ring, trophy, and they wear it proudly. Some students work hard to be the valedictorian or the salutatorian. So a couple concerns come to mind. If we don't do that and everybody's just driving for a 5.0, 4.0, or a 3.0, where's the drive in the kid? And I understand that it doesn't show up on a college application if you won this North Carolina State football championship, unless you're going for a scholarship for football. They don't care. They want to know what you know academically. The second part of that is who's going to give the speech. Because I've been a part of 4 graduations now, 3 graduations, and there have been some amazing speeches given by valedictorians. So who's going to give that next? The class president, the school president. I've heard some of those, and some of them have been good, and some of them didn't measure up to the same as the valedictorian. I don't know if there's another way of devising how you come up with that person. I mean, because it's solely academic. It's not whether you have perfect attendance and you're the highest rated. I've heard that it could be very time-consuming finding out who the valedictorian is of the school. It's been very time-consuming for them to get to that point. So I don't think, if that's the case, and I'm not saying it is, but if it's that it's going to be so time-consuming on the school administration to figure out who the valedictorian is, that's not a valid argument, because it's been very time-consuming for that student to become the valedictorian. They put in many hours and sacrificed many things to get to number 1. And trust me, I hear all the time how competitive that is, and who opts out of band, and who opts out of body wellness, and who opts out of course because they don't get the same GPA. And now it's who's going to take the courses in 8th grade that are going to put them ahead of everybody else, or who's going to go online and take some virtual courses that are going to put them ahead. If they go do that, go do it, because you're going to be rewarded in life when you strive to achieve like that. So to take that away, I'm a little torn about, but I would love to have a deeper conversation sometime later about it.
Mr. Howell, I will share with you, and Mr. Booker, I think it was a month ago, that Mr. Booker shared with the board other districts, for example, Wake County, have moved in this direction already. So we're on the back end of this as a school system. You have great questions that I asked. In fact, Mr. Booker and I have worked on this item several months before even sharing it with the instruction committee, because we agree with a lot of the comments that you've made. For example, in some of the other districts and smaller high schools, they're able to do it. They're also able to have 4 or 5 kids be valedictorian and share speeches. But as you get into a district our size in some of our high schools, as we make the transition to what you just discussed, moving high school courses to middle school, providing more CCP courses through our partnership with Gaston College, and more of our own online courses, it's going to be impossible, because we agree with you. We're happy to stay and determine who the valedictorian is, and we're happy to hear 3 speeches, but what we're talking about, you could have 15 children tied for number 1. And the reason why it's an information item is because we felt that we need to share it with the full board as we're working through this, but it is still very much in committee. And so the next time we present it to the board, we'll be glad to bring you some more of those examples as to how this is going to continue this is going to become an issue for our high schools if we don't make some decisions about this moving forward, so that you don't have 15 students that are identified as valedictorian.
Can I have a follow-up question or a comment?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Howell, then Mr. Dedman.
You made the statement, and this, I'm not picking on you, so please don't take it that way. I love you with all my heart. That Wake County have done it, other counties have done it, and we're behind. I've said numerous times, I don't know how this is going to sound when it comes out, probably terrible. I don't care what other counties do, because I think Gaston County needs to stand on its own merit and rise up. And where other people do things, just because they jump off that bridge, it may not be the best bridge to jump off of. So I hope that wouldn't be a determining factor, or I hope it wouldn't even come into the equation, what is everybody else doing? Because we could also go back and say, almost every college in America is still doing a valedictorian, and that would be a great selling point. So I don't mean that to sound like it probably just sounded. Trust me, I don't. But I hope we're not putting all of our eggs in that basket.
And Mr. Howell, thank you for saying that. I referenced Wake County because that's the article that Mr. Booker shared with you. But in my Job Alike group, I've talked with Rowan, Salisbury, Cleveland County. And the other thing is that they're already doing it because they're ahead of us already. Like for 2 or 3 years, Union County's offered high school courses in middle school. We're just starting that. So while we're suggesting that we take this away from high school seniors. We're also suggesting that we provide our kids with a 2-year degree when they leave high school, to provide more of those options. So for parents and for the child, they go to college and potentially leave in 4 years with a master's degree. So just the landscape of public education is changing. So that's really where we're going. We agree with you, Gaston County is unique, as you know, discussed in the classroom moment. We believe in growing our own. So we certainly still want to continue to be unique, and we'll continue to research what they're doing at the college level with valedictorian as well, Mr. Howell. Thank you, that's a good comment.
Mr. Dedman?
Dr. Balknight and Mr. Montgomery, has there been any thought about, are we going to call them something? I do know that some school systems, if you're in the top 10 or you're top 5, they do announce that. I mean, I don't know what they call it, something else. But being a former high school principal, I think we do need to discuss this in depth. I don't think this is the time, but I do think we need to come to your meeting and discuss it. We've all tried as high school principals to get away from using valedictorian and salutatorian. Never once did I want a child not to excel or do the best they could do, but it becomes so problematic when you mentioned, Mr. Howell, about taking an extra course and increasing your GPA. Do you know if you take an extra course, it decreases your GPA? I sat on a committee that in the last 5 or 6 years, the more arguments come up about valedictorian and salutatorian than they're telling you right now. But I also, being a principal at Highland, I wanted all of our kids to succeed and do well, and they did a great job. But we do need to change it somewhat. And Jameson, thank you for your work at Dr. Balknight. And we do need to figure out some way to make us look like we're really doing a good job at what we're doing and reward those children for what they've done. I do know in some other states that they had a valedictorian, there was like 12, and they called it something, and there was a cutoff at some particular point. They just made a comment whether it was 10% of the top class or 5% or something. But I'm sure that we can come up with some factor that will make everybody happy.
Thank you, Mr. Dedman. We will also research that as well. Good comments.
I'm just going to make a comment, and first I need to clarify a couple things. One sounds like I may be bragging, but I've had one child that was a val and one that just missed. And what I want to say about that, number one, is that those genes came from my mother, from their mother, and the spirit in education, but in the push and drive by the mother, and not so much from the father. But it takes a village to raise a child, as Miss Guthrie always says. But with that. The one that didn't make it was, to Mr. Dedman's point, the schedule just didn't accommodate what one of my children was able to get. And essentially, before the school year started, everybody knew who the valedictorian was going to be because of the class schedule. And one of my children they couldn't, and I didn't ask them to try to change or accommodate the schedule for one person, because that's not fair, but that goes on. And parents, Mr. Dedman can speak to this, parents lobby those principals and put a lot of pressure on them to try to accommodate schedules just for that. The other part that I really struggle with, having 2 children that were in that drive to do that, is they had to make decisions to lay down an instrument, something they loved, or course or sing. And those were tough decisions that we ask children to do in this county, to lay down an art that they love so that they can strive to be number one. And so I struggle with both sides of this argument. And I think it needs to be talked out loud and discussed more. And I applaud that you're brave enough to bring it up and talk about it, the curriculum committee, because it's something that is you're going to get a lot of opinions both ways. But here I am, I'm sitting here, I struggle with moving forward, keeping it, or I see all the merits of not having it as well. But when we, and I don't know how else to say this, but when we change the AP courses from 6 down to 5, Mr. Montgomery said it best, we're probably going to have 8 or 10 valedictorians. And I do see that coming, because I look at graduations across the county and I see where we have 4 of them sometimes in some schools, to Mr. Montgomery's point. And I'll be quiet. Any other questions, comments, Ms. Roberts?
I don't remember if I brought this up in committee or not. I'm still very torn on this subject, but I would love to hear what student advisory is saying about this. That's who it's affecting. We need to hear from them. And they may have their own spin on it because they're the ones that are affected.
Mayor,
Ms. Guthrie.
since our meeting, I have done some research myself, and I do see that there are some districts and across the state, as well as other states, who are actually doing this. Found 2 or 3 good articles, and this is just for information tonight that they are presenting. I would like to share my articles with Dr. Balknight and Mr. Montgomery, just so that they will have this as additional reference when we present this again for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Any more questions or comments?
Mr. Collier, I would just like to add, we're bringing this tonight because we're recommending the class of 2019. But the last thing that we'd want to do is bring this to you the summer before the class of 2019. So we feel an obligation that if we move forward, if this board were to approve it, that we would meet with those children that are the top 20 or 30 in these schools, because it's very important, as Mr. Howell illustrated, that these children work so hard and they go into high school working for this goal. So to really explain to them that nothing is being taken away, it is changing because we're giving them more opportunities. And we do also, Mr. Dedman, that's not something that's come up to give it a different name for the top 10%. That's something certainly that we'll look at as well, which is why it's still in committee. I've actually been taking notes as a part of the discussion that you all have had with me, and I have 10 things to go back and research before our next instruction committee that we'll take back to the committee. So thank you for the input.
Thank you, Dr. Balknight, Mr. Montgomery. All right, the next item is our EOG and EOC Summer School. Dr. Balknight.
Yes, sir. This item was shared with you around this time last year. Last year, this was the first time that the state offered this in several years. About 5 or 6 years ago, the state allowed school systems to remediate and retest before the end of the school year to improve the students' end-of-the-year assessment. Now the state is saying that that information and that support would have to be provided after the school year. We did do this on a limited basis last year. It came in late. We shared it with this committee, and we did use it in our high schools. And we had significant improvements for the students that did participate in the summer school last year. So our request for this year is to provide a 1-week program for students in middle and high school after school is over for a review for students, and then they retake the EOC and EOG. In middle school, it would be math and reading, and then in high school, it would be the core content areas of EOC. Here are the content areas listed in high school. So those are the areas. I will share with you, I didn't put it in the document, but I thought that some of you may be interested that we had 250 students take us up last year just from high school and 8th grade Math 1 in the summer school. And every school that had students come for our summer review, they had improvements in their own individual EOC score, and it also positively impacted the school and the school system. And this is an action item for approval.
Okay, it's an action item, so I need a motion. Motion by Mr. Usher, second by Ms. Cherry. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show by raising your hand. And that's unanimous. Well, Mr. Ramsey's left the room. Just show him as abstain. Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is the budget update. Mr. Hoskins.
I want to just do a budget update for this year's budget. First thing I want to do is look at the budget calendar, just to update you on where we are and where we've been. We started this budget process back in January, if you'll recall, back in the board retreat. We surveyed our stakeholders and got their input on what our budget priorities should be. And the dates here may change. I understand there may be some possible changes in the board dates, but we'll be bringing a formal recommendation for the superintendent's budget at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, and we will be delivering this budget to our county commissioners on or before May 15th, as required by law.
Mr. Hoskins, I'm going to interrupt you there. We are not going to meet April the 3rd on that budget calendar because of spring break. So,
okay, so we'll adjust this as you make adjustments to the board calendar. And then, of course, we'll be waiting for the county commissioners to approve their county budget and the state General Assembly to approve the state budget. So just an update on the state budget. As you know, that's about 70% of our total funding. The governor last week or the week before did come out with his 2017 to 2019 biennium budget. That'll be the next 2 years, so we're in the second year of a biennium budget. His budget does provide for funding increases for changes in student populations. If you recall, a couple years ago, the General Assembly pulled that out as an automatic increase. He has salary increases or proposed salary increases for teachers of 5% a year for the next 2 years and 6.5% for school-based administrators, principals, assistant principals, et cetera. And also some funding for textbooks, digital resources, and school-based personnel. The budget also, or the governor's budget also includes a $150 stipend for teachers. As you know, they quite often spend a lot of their own money trying to buy supplies for their classrooms, so this would help to offset that a little bit. And also provides a salary increase of 2% or $800, whichever is greater, plus a $500 bonus for the non-certified personnel, which includes central office, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, et cetera. And then some increases in employer-provided benefits such as retirement and health insurance. Right now, the North Carolina House and Senate have not yet released their budget. We're expected for the Senate to release their budget in mid-April. The House should follow after that, and then we'll have a reconciliation process that may take some time because there are some differences, even though both are controlled by the Republicans. They do have different tracks and different opinions on funding for public education. And the last thing I just wanted to point out, and I talked about this last time, and this has a significant impact on our funding, and that is House Bill 13. That has been approved unanimously by the House and has not yet been taken up by the Senate still. If you'll recall, House Bill 13 will help reduce some of the classroom size reduction requirements that the current budget bill will impose upon us next year. And that will have some significant financial impacts to us because it does not give us any extra funding. So we have to have smaller classrooms, but no more teachers. No provisions for additional facilities to house those teachers. So I know that a number of you, and Ms. Cherry and others, have contacted the state senators and expressed their opinion as to why the Senate should take this up and the impact that it will have on us. So we need to continue to fight that fight. And here's just the K-3 class size challenges, no increased funding, teachers, or for the facilities. Yes, ma'am.
I won't say who, but one of the senators wrote me back and indicated that until he hears from all stakeholders, that he's opposed to HB 13. So I'm encouraging all of us to respond to our representatives. I thought that was interesting. So.
Right now, we have at your spot a draft of our expansion request. It should look like this. It has two primary categories on it: ongoing expenditures and new initiatives. The ongoing expenditures will be the cost to maintain operations as they're currently happening. Those may change due to changes in the law, inflation, end of life for certain technology. The second category is new initiatives, and those would be expenses related to new programs, projects, et cetera, that we have proposed in order to support the vision or that may be imposed on us by changes in laws. So looking at ongoing expenditures, there are two items that make this up. The amount is $471,000. The first item is state-mandated increase in employer-paid benefits. That would be the contribution that we make to an individual's retirement. That is projected to increase, I think, by 7% next year, which is consistent with the increase that we had this year. And the other item is the increase in health insurance premiums. And again, last year it went up 4%, so we're projecting a 4% increase this year. And that's guidance that we've been given by DPI. As that guidance gets a little more clear, we'll continue to refine those projections. The other item is replacement of end-of-life mobile devices. That would represent the cost of replacing the current Chromebooks that we have that we're expecting to go out of service this year. And that total is 1,743 Chromebooks, totaling about $150 each. And so that would represent us essentially staying where we are right now. So the bad Chromebooks are replaced by new Chromebooks, no increase in the total number of outstanding mobile devices.
I really, truly don't.
It's a group effort.
I know we're not compared to other districts, but you do a phenomenal job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The other item is the new initiatives, and this is always the bigger of the two items. There's 5 items listed on here, but the number one item, state-mandated K-3 class size changes, represents over half of the total amount that we're asking for. Of the $8.4 million, it's over half of that. This would represent, based on our projections for what we would need next year to meet the upcoming law for class size reduction, we would need about 70 teachers and about 30 to 34 additional mobile classrooms or some other type of classroom accommodation in order to meet those requirements. So that is a very big item, and as I mentioned, HB 13 would help reduce that by at least 2/3. The second item, certified employee salary supplement and classified employee salary adjustment. The certified employee salary supplement, we've talked about this every year, certainly since I've been here. This is the teacher supplements. We have made tremendous strides in trying to be more competitive. We are recommending $500,000 for this year. That would represent what it would take for us to get to where Cabarrus County is over a 3-year period. So we would need about $1.5 million to get to where they are now. And that's still below the state average. So we're trying to get it in sizable chunks that we can absorb. But that would be our recommendation. The other item is classified employee salary adjustment, and that would represent a 3% increase in our certified employee salaries. Again, that's bus drivers, cafeteria workers, central office, et cetera. State employees and county employees have been getting some increases over the past couple years, and we are recommending that we have a 3% increase for our school employees. Additional school options. Dr. Baltonight has talked, at least since the board retreat back in January, about some of our opportunities and goals that we want to have for school choice, specifically being the Gifted and Talented Academy at Pleasant Ridge and the virtual academy for our middle school students. We've leveraged the building of a new Pleasant Ridge into significantly reducing the cost to have that Gifted and Talented Academy at Pleasant Ridge compared to what we did at Hawks Nest because that was not a brand-new facility. So we've been able to significantly lower the cost on that, so we're asking for $100,000 to be able to start both of those programs. The next item is achieving a 1-to-1 mobile device to student ratio. I think we need 8,400 additional devices in order to have every single student have a mobile device. The cost of that would be about $1.9 million to get to that 1-to-1 student ratio. And I think that's DPI has put that as a goal for North Carolina school systems in the coming year. And finally, K-8 teacher professional development. That represents some professional development to assist our kindergarten through 8th grade teachers in reading, writing strategies and support in their classrooms to help us as we continue to try to improve our achievement scores going forward. So when you look at what we asked for last year and what we're asking for this year, it's about $3 million more. But the primary reason for that is the K-3 classroom size reductions. So that is a large reason that we had that significant increase. Next would be our capital request. You know, capital includes a lot of things: roofing, HVAC, plumbing, technology, furniture, etc. Last year, we requested $5,225,000 to help support and maintain our 5 million square feet of office space or school space and office space that we have. This year, we're requesting $5.8 million in capital. That represents $1.16 per square foot. And we went to a publication called the Council on Great City Schools, and they survey various school systems throughout the country, and the range of routine maintenance per square foot, the lowest quartile was 95 cents, the higher quartile was $1.34, the median was $1.24, and so we're asking for $1.16. So we're a little bit less than the median, but we're certainly within the range of where most school systems receive capital funds for their routine maintenance. And one of the reasons...
Excuse me, what do we get now?
We get $1,227,000.
That comes out to how much money per square foot?
25 cents per square.
25 cents, so okay, we're getting 25 cents from the county, and most school systems are getting $1.12.
$1.24 is the median. And one of the reasons, you know, as you know, 57% roughly of our buildings, of our square footage of our buildings is 40 years of age or older. So we have older facilities. We really need to be trending up past the median of $1.24 per square foot, but this is certainly would be a step in the right direction. And finally, our next steps, you know, as I mentioned, the challenges of the additional K-3 classrooms, we got to continue to stay on that, continue to have a dialogue with our state senators, and continue to watch for what that impact may be on us, and prioritize our needs, capital needs for the county. We're doing that through our operations committee, and then, you know, finalize this budget request and present it to you, and ultimately the county commissioners. So
Thank you, Mr. Hoskins. Questions, Ms. Cherry?
Gary, have you gotten any indication from legislature when they might vote on that? Because they know that we're working on our budgets.
On HB 13?
Yes.
Not the Senate, no.
Mr. Dedman?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I just have one question about the Chromebooks, not to beat up something. But one-to-one is a great thing. But, you know, when I was a high school principal, sometimes you're not using those Chromebooks all the time. The question is this: if they're sitting in there, do they go bad just as quickly as if they're using every day?
Each Chromebook has a certain number of charges, And then, so it's because it's been used, the battery runs down and it's recharged.
Okay, I know that we'd have liked to have more when I was working, but we had the ones we had, and we had a good schedule to go them around. I mean, it's nice to give everybody one, but I was just wondering if there was any way to save some money in that way. Now, I wanted to go before Mr. Howe because he has a lot of questions.
Mr. Howe.
So one of my questions with technology, Lee was looking on my paper, and I appreciate you reading my question.
Right here, look, right there. See that?
I'm glad I can support you. One of my questions on the life of the Chromebook, I know I bought my wife one just because it was cheap, and it's worked really good, but she probably doesn't use it as much as a fifth grader. My question is, on the ones that, the Chromebooks that are at the end of life, are those puntable to like kindergarten students, first grade students that maybe don't use them as often, would be a little more rugged on them and have a tendency to drop them, so you're not giving them a new one in their hands? So when we say end of life, are they going to the recycle bin somewhere? Are we shipping them to Haiti so they can use them? I mean, a little explanation, or do we have to, no, we have to sell them on the government surplus thing. So can we use those in the system if we don't get all the funding to go to one-to-one? And the second, I'll let you answer that in a second. I'm just going to get all my questions out. The second one, and I think Ms. Cherry might have asked a question, you might have answered it, and I might have missed it. Have we had a conversation with our county commissioner, because I'd be willing to meet Mr. Worley at Giorgio's in the morning at 7:45, but have we had a discussion with him about House Bill 13 and the impact that this could have to our budget, to sit down and explain to him what that is and what it looks like and why we're doing it? I mean, I know we may have, maybe with the chair, but have we as a full board, other than saying, here's a piece of paper, here's what we're dealing with?
Mr. Howe, Mr. Collier actually asked after our last presentation that we draft something providing the clarification. We had hoped there might be some movement, and then with the other discussions you all were having, we didn't want to cloud the two, and so when Gary brought that up again, he said, I would like to get that letter out this week to them, giving our viewpoint on that. So that'll be going.
Okay. Okay, so
Mr. Howell, we're going to ask for the commissioners to help us reaching out to the state senate with what contacts they have.
No, it's not just that. I think it's important that we not just give a letter, that we have a face-to-face. Mr. Worley and I have met a couple times and talked, and I think if I'd have sent him a letter with the discussion, he'd have been like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. But meeting face-to-face was good for us. So I just think, for whatever it's worth, we can meet.
I don't disagree, Mr. Howell. I mean, this is very important. I mean, it's $4.8 million. And I'm not quite sure how we tackle it because, the county has limited funds. So I agree with you. We need to talk to the commissioners. And again, I would, anybody who has any relationships with them, please help emphasize the importance of this HB 13, that we can get it passed by the Senate.
But
I'm sorry,
recognizing
Mr.
HB 13, we still will have a seven-figure bill to come up with. It's over $1 million that HB 13 will still require.
Mr. Howell, I'm sorry. Are you finished?
You can send me an email on the Chromebook thing later if you want to.
You want me to? Basically, if a system board fails and a screen cracks, the technicians try to fix them and put them together, and we use them until they won't go anymore. So there's zero value until it won't charge anymore, or it's missing keys, or we don't have one to match it with. So they're complete failures.
Perfect. That's all I need. Thank you. I appreciate your effort.
Okay. Questions or comments? With none, Mr. Hoskins, thank you for that presentation. I can't say that I'm excited, but thank you for telling us where we are. All right, the next item we pulled up, contracts and benchmark assessments, grades 3 through 8. Dr. Balknight.
Yes, sir, and I have the contract here. Let me just briefly tell you. We started contract with Case 21 last year to utilize a benchmark benchmark assessment system. 2 years ago, the state provided a benchmark assessment system, and that went away. And so local districts were left to develop or identify their own benchmark systems. We did use this last spring for our end-of-the-year benchmark. We got lots of positive feedback from our teachers and from our principals. We treated this like the real EOG, and so what it does, we talk a lot about autopsy data or physical data. So an autopsy data for us is when they get their final EOG scores back. But when they're able to utilize a benchmark assessment 30 days prior to the EOG, then that really helps the teacher who's completed the majority of the content to drive what their focus is for their students, specifically in their classrooms. This is when you'll go in schools and you'll see teachers after they've received their benchmark assessments, their flex grouping, and so they're sending students to different classrooms for small groups to focus on skills that they need. And our goal is the more that we prepare our children, the more successful they are, so that we don't have students in summer school, Read to Achieve summer school, our benchmark EOC state summer school as well. So this was very positive. This is one of the things the principals asked us after it was over last year. Could we make sure that we do again this year?
Mr. Howell.
Let me get my one question out of the way, and then if, depending on the answer, I'll have a follow-up or one.
Okay.
In doing trying to do some homework on TE21, I see they're a Charleston-based company. I saw what they did in trying to do my homework on benchmark assessments and those sort of things. It seems it's more for the school, the classroom, even the district, to measure where our students are at before we ever give them the final test, to make sure that the outcome is where we want it to be at, that we're achieving what we want to. So in doing that, I ran across Ready Home-Based, North Carolina Home-Based Guidelines for Building Benchmark Assessments. Is that system still available to Gaston County schools or no?
We use, for our high school SchoolNet, we do not use Ready Home Base because a part of that they use is SchoolNet. We have found, and we've tried to use a little bit this year, SchoolNet at the middle and elementary level, and we don't find it to be efficient or effective. It is working for our high schools because of the 3 areas that they work in. And so working with other districts and reaching out to see what are you using. Case 21 is based in Charleston, but the employees that work for them are all former retired superintendents and educators from North Carolina, so they're very familiar with our content. It is an approved provider by the Department of Public Instruction. It's one of their partner companies, so it's been vetted, and it's a benefit for the school system, absolutely, Mr. Howell.
Right.
For us to know where the kids are 30 days prior. But the most benefit is for the individual student in the classroom, because then they're also able to get that assessment after they've taken it, and the teachers go through it and walk them through. For example, this year, for the first time ever in our district, we're going to do all of our middle school testing online. Well, I'm nervous about that. So this is a great way for us not only to get data about what do they need to know 30 days prior to the EOG, but a good practice run. Because for our students with exceptional needs, we always do something called regular routine practice. Now we're going to provide this for every student in grades 3 through 8 that test regular routine practice. So the day of the EOG, they're not unfamiliar with online testing. Now, are we practicing in pockets? Yes, sir. But to absolutely assure that every child in this district has had the same opportunity, this is how we provide that.
Okay, so to show you that I did my homework, I know that the North Carolina representative was a former superintendent of Durham, which is the 8th largest district in the state of North Carolina, and Franklin before that. So
I didn't know that, so good.
I did do my homework on that
Okay.
one. So this assessment that we're doing with the 108,000, is that just for middle school that we're doing the assessment, or is it for K through 8 or 3rd through 8? Are we doing it for 3 through 8?
It's 3 through 8. It's math, reading, and in middle school, it's math, reading, and science. So this is also something new for us that we, in the past, have not had a benchmark for science, and 8th graders take a science EOG, so this is also important for us as well. And then the 5th grade science, which is online for our 5th grade students in elementary school.
Okay, so to go back to the Ready Home Base, you're saying that is not, because in looking at it, again, I'm ignorant to it because I'm not an educator, but in looking at it, you could create a district benchmark, a school benchmark, or classroom benchmark, and then you could also produce your own scan sheet to go with it as well, so that you could print your own bubble sheet. I found it fascinating. But that's not productive for our system, that we're going to spend 100. And then the follow-up question to that is, where are we taking the $108,952 from? Is that coming from?
Mr. Howell, a couple points of clarification for you. One, what you're talking about with home-based, that would take us developing it. So effectively, we are outsourcing the development of that assessment because we found a third-party provider to do it, and we believe it's effective. The funding part is part of our budget because we had success with it last year. We had feedback from our leadership in the district that they liked it, so we're expanding it, and we provided that as a line item in Dr. Balknight's academic services budget.
Has that assessment changed in the last 3 years, the 3rd through 8th?
Oh, yes, sir, because what the state will do is they'll release past tests, which give you fresh questions and fresh data that you can then use. We've also, 2 years ago, we were one of the pilot sites, and one of the reasons we wanted to be the pilot site was that it gave us access to data to understand how they were aligning the test with the curriculum so that we could begin to see the formulation of that.
I know I'm asking more questions than I need to.
Mr. Howell,
but-
let me just say this, that for years, we have used local benchmarks, and then the state gave us one. And one of the things about when you create them, they look good, but we have so many teachers sending us emails, and they're frustrated, as they should be, because then we have mistakes when we make them locally. It may not be a valid question, and so this is already research-based and aligned. It links to a 91% accuracy that if this is the score today, then if that were the EOG, it'd be the same score. So really, as a teacher, we're able to say, we need to prioritize standard 3.1 for this student so that we can focus on this so that he can be successful. That's the one thing that he's missing.
But I guess the hard thing for me to understand is that the benchmarks haven't, if the data, what we're teaching our students hasn't changed in the last 3 years, if the test still has the same core values of the test that it has. Now, I know Johnny may have taken home 5 apples instead of 3 apples, whatever. If that hasn't changed, wouldn't the best person to create the benchmark be the teacher? And maybe the frustration is because we tried to create it ourselves from a central office level that, to be quite honest, that person's not in the classroom with the teacher. And so the teacher, to me, and I could be completely wrong, the teacher knows their students, they know the material that's being tested, give them the ability to do that. And then over a 3-year period, we save $108,000 per year of outsourcing that. If they change the Common Core standards or the essential standards or the way they're going to test, then we adapt to that and maybe we look at something different. But I'm not an educator, so I don't understand this, but I'm trying to figure it out.
Well, I appreciate that. And here's the thing, Mr. Howell, it is a lot of money, but in the past, when we utilized teachers, we don't pretend to know it all at the district office, because prior to this year, there was one Shannon Hullett for all of the elementary schools ELA. So we would pull teachers in the summer and create benchmarks. And because we're not a research company, they weren't valid. They didn't give us the data that we needed. So to put children and take time away from instruction, we need to have the best product that's going to provide valid data for the classroom teacher. The benefit, the extra credit, so to speak, is for the district to know. But really, ultimately, why the principal's asked to make sure we're going to do this again is because as a principal and as a teacher, they could pull groups with targeted areas so they could tweak the child's learning or understanding of something so they could be successful and not have to take something over, not pass something that they need to move on. So we found it to be a very good use of dollars. It is a lot of money for an assessment, but the results that we receive, they analyze it, they send it back to us in 48 hours. We pull the principals, and so the very next day, and we're going to do that over spring break, when the students come back from spring break, the teachers will be able to go in for those 30 days and really prepare students for testing.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
Having someone from the outside to do this that has already proven successful to give the information that you need as an administrator and a teacher, you're not taking time away from instruction in order to create the assessment, which to me would be, that's it. That's the beauty of having someone who is skilled in that. We've used it. We've gotten success with it. It gives immediate information. That's what you've got to have. In order to have a game plan to attack what the kids need, you have to have that kind of information. Sounds like you got it last year.
Ms. Roberts.
What I was going to say, Mr. Ussery pretty much said, but I will let Mr. Howell know that in speaking to teachers, they're already weighed down with so many things that take away from instructional time that their concern is this is just another thing that would take away from that instructional time.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Mr. Dedman.
Last one. Did we see an improvement in their test scores this past year versus when we weren't doing it?
Mr. Dedman, we had the largest growth of proficiency in the state out of the Big Ten districts. But the most powerful piece of data for me is when the principal said to the superintendent and to myself, "Are we going to do this again? This is the best thing that we've done." And to Ms. Roberts' point, we're meeting the first week in April with accountability because we're working next year to decrease and become more efficient with our assessments. Because the last thing that we want to do is take time away from instruction. But if you don't assess students to know where they are, you don't know where to take them. So there's a fine balance between the two.
May I say that we have already in our after-school tutorial program in my church, teachers are concerned right now about taking those tests, online testing, and they are on me to make sure that I can get the resources that they need in order to have those children ready. So we do have a need to have those things sourced out so that we can get our children prepared and look at those areas that need to be improved.
Ms. Cherry?
And another advantage is the timeliness that you get the data back. Being on the accountability committee at the state, you know, they're piloting these programs, and several of our schools were picked to do several tests during the year so that you can immediately get the results back and work with those children on specific goals that are geared for that specific child. So this parallels with that. But I would think that getting the data back immediately is a huge benefit to the teachers.
Okay, any more questions or comments? This is an action item. Would you consider putting it back under the consent agenda for vote? Okay. We're going to move that back under the consent agenda for a vote, and that will get us back to the consent agenda. And I'll need a motion. A motion by Ms. Guthrie.
Second.
A second by Mr. Ushery. Any discussion about any other items on the consent agenda? With none, all those in favor show by raising your hand, and that's unanimous. And that gets us down to the superintendent's comments.
Thank you.
Ms. Guthrie, if you will, please.
Thank you. I just want to do a shout out to Torben Ross, who actually did do a parent academy on Saturday at Hunterhurst High School. And Mr. Ross, although the weather was rainy outside, he was well prepared, and I thought that those parents that attended the academy were interested, and they did get some very valuable information. I saw collaboration and cooperation from the middle school, Southwest Middle School, Greer Middle School, and the children performed. I thought it was outstanding. They did a great job.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Mr. Booker.
Great. And I will piggyback. That was going to be my first item.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And I will add to you.
I didn't look at your notes.
I will add that we have our second meeting this weekend at Bessemer City High School on the 25th. So I agree with everything that she has said. This is a continuation of the outreach what the board asked for us in creating the engagement position, and this is just evidence of the work that is going on. Great things. You all as a board worked and talked about career and technical education and what we could do. This is the weeks where stuff starts coming together. We have the Manufacturing and Career Expo this Thursday at Gaston College. This is where our high school students are shown opportunities for career options in advanced manufacturing, and they meet with local representatives from businesses here in Gaston County. And then the big event is next Wednesday, March 29th, where it's our Students at Work Day. And remember, that's every 8th grader getting an opportunity to visit a local business and learn about that particular business. This is a coordination between CTE and our Gaston Chamber, so part of that business partnership. And then coming up on April 1st, and this is not an April Fool's joke, will be our College Expo from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Gaston Early College High School on the Gaston College campus. You hear us saying Gaston College a lot. We are fortunate that it's a true partnership between those two organizations in your community, and so this will be part of the college planning process. This will have college representatives there for our community to meet with. we're beginning our recognition season with the National Board Certified Teachers Reception, which will be on Tuesday, March 28th at 4 p.m. here in the boardroom. So I encourage you, if you have the opportunity to be here, to recognize those folks who continue their lifelong learning. Also, April 6th, if you could get that on your calendar, at 4:30 p.m. at the Shield Museum, we'll be having our Star Teacher, Star Student Awards program, and that is a great event. Earlier tonight in our good news, we talked about arts. We have a lot of things going on, Battle of Books, Math Masters, which shows your curriculum, but it's also the season where spring musicals are at our high schools. A couple have already had theirs and a couple more coming up, and I encourage you to get to see those. It's phenomenal to watch all the departments come together, because that takes the art department with the stage design, chorus with the music part. It's just, we do some phenomenal things. We hope to see our participation in the Bloomie Awards once again recognize how strong our arts program is. And finally, Through an Artist's Eyes, Student Art Show opens this weekend in the Gaston County Museum in Dallas. And be prepared to spend some time, because it takes a while to look at the great artwork all the way from our elementary schools through the high schools. We are very fortunate in this community with the talent that we have. And that's all, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Ms. Cherry.
Can I comment? Whoever came up with the donut challenge is PR genius, because I have a feeling that expo is going to be packed out. It's between the high schools to vote on your school, and every student gets a donut, whoever wins. So I think us is leading.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cherry. Just want to point out, as I said to Mr. Hoskins, we're not going to meet April the 3rd, and we're just scheduled for one regular board meeting, April the 10th. And just want to make sure that everybody marks your calendars accordingly. I've been told we do not have a need for closed session. Mr. Howe.
On that April the 10th, since the superintendent's budget was supposed to be presented to us for the 3rd, will that be should we go ahead and prepare for a lengthy meeting, because we'll have to take a look at that, ask questions, that sort of thing? It's not going to be one of those ones we try to cruise through, because we won't meet again until the 1st of May.
That would be an affirmative. Okay. And with that, that takes us to item number 19. Mr. Dedman. Motion second by Mr. Ramsey. All those in favor, show by raising your hand. And we are adjourned.